Okay, so thank you for joining us again today. It's great to see some people back again for our fourth, I believe, in the series. We have still got a few more left, so stay tuned for those. This week, we are talking about project management, and I think it's a really hot topic that people quite often neglect. But if you can keep your project on time and in budget, I mean, everyone's happy, aren't they? So just to get us started, with Thought Quarter, we are the proud tech partner of Changemakers. So we work with companies who are really making a difference to the world and making our planet a better place. I'm Florence, I'm the marketing manager, and today I'm going to be hosting the webinar. And then we also have Sam with us.
Hello, welcome back. I'm Sam, Managing Director, co-founder, and I look after growth and exciting things.
Good morning, I'm Mark. I'm Senior Project Manager here at Thought Quarter, working on many exciting projects as we speak.
That's good to know, Mark. Okay, so I guess we'll get started then. I mean, I think the first question to ask is what is project management and what does a project manager do? Should I point that towards you, Mark?
Yes, a project manager is somebody that would herd cats, push water uphill. It can be a difficult role. It's an exciting role where we would manage not only internally the team and our internal stakeholders, but also the external stakeholders as well and clients, and keeping a relationship going through everybody. And I like to try and be someone, and a project manager should be someone that protects the team as we go as well.
For sure, definitely. So I guess we've had this discussion before, and there's an ideal project team, which I think is really important to sort of cover what the ideal structure is, but not everyone's in that position. And we were talking the other day, Sam and Mark, that we actually think even if you're not a project management, you probably are a project manager. Sam, do you want to carry on that conversation?
Yeah, it's a bit scary, really. When we were talking through this prep, we actually realized that everyone's a PM in some shape or form, because when we look at our clients, essentially they're managing a project internally that they've entrusted to us. When we look at the team, Mark, our other PMs are managing a project for successful delivery. When you look at an individual developer, designer, tester, they are assigned a mini project. You know, each piece of work that we give them is a mini project. You zoom out to an organization and you think about a CEO, a CMO, a CFO, they're managing projects that are made up of lots of other little projects. So actually, the reason why I think this discussion is so valuable is that there's something that all of us can learn from about being a good PM that actually helps us in our day-to-day role.
Yeah, for sure. I think even for myself, some of the things that Mark was talking through the other day, I can implement them into what I do as a marketeer, especially as a solo marketeer when I'm outsourcing to other agencies. Some of the tools they go across the whole business, really, don't they?
Yeah, and I was just thinking back to the comment you were making before about what is a PM, and sometimes I've described it to clients as the PM being the one that puts all the jigsaw pieces in the right place. Projects are complicated, and if you don't manage them in the right way, you're essentially shaking the box really hard, hoping that the jigsaw makes itself. And we can all identify with that analogy. We all have puzzles to solve in our day-to-day work life, don't we?
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the whole point of this webinar is to help people and show not only how we make sure our projects stay on time and in budget, but how they can do it for their own projects. Perhaps they haven't got a project manager, or perhaps it's a new relationship. So Mark, what sort of best practices can we give these people to help them in their everyday life?
So help in everyday life is understand where you want to get to, understand the question that you're being asked by your stakeholders, your requesters. And then break the project down into, if you want of a better word, about bite-sized bite-sized pieces, iterations, something that you can give to people, give to a client, give to internal stakeholders to show benefit of what you're doing. The old way, of getting a project and spending 6 months putting together the project plan for an 18-month project, it has sort of gone away in a lot of agencies, and a lot of where we're talking now with some of the clients that we'd be chatting to, they haven't got that huge roadmap of 18 months. They've got something that they want to deliver within, 2 or 3 iterations. Another phrase to use is sprints. So keeping it quite short and sharp, delivering benefit, and making sure you understand the question, making sure you know what you're being asked, because you can go down blind alleys and rabbit holes, and all of a sudden you've spent 6 months and delivered nothing.
Yeah, I guess it's that point of, and we say a lot of thought culture, it's one of our values, but it's that point of clarity, isn't it? Even before you get started, by breaking it into these smaller chunks, it almost provides more clarity in every section for every member of a team. I'm sure you'd agree, Sam.
Yeah, and I think Mark mentions there kind of the more modern way, for want of a better word, and I do think this point of modern PM is a really valid one. I don't want to take this discussion down an agile rabbit hole, but the key thing that a PM does is manage change. You go back 10, 15 years, the key thing a PM did was try and manage a schedule and try and stick to a plan and try and reconcile to a plan. You think of HS2. Basically, PMs on HS2 have tried for the entire duration of HS2 to stick to the original plan. When actually, Mark, I'm sorry, I'm going to steal one of your favorite quotes here. I think you say everyone has a plan till they're punched in the face, Mike Tyson's saying. And I think what a PM needs to do is essentially anticipate that change. There's an element of sitting down and road mapping the project. This is what we think it's going to look like. But you kind of accept on day one that roadmap is what you're reconciling against and how you're managing change. Because change will come. We just look at the past quarter for the economy. So many things have changed. We've had a change of government. There's possibly a change of interest rates on the horizon in the next few months. Those things directly translate into changes to priorities of businesses, which directly translate into changes of priority for project managers. So it's really important to just be nimble and be able to not fight the change, to actually become a resource or a tool that the business can use to adapt to change. And that's where PM stops being an overhead and actually becomes a value driver. Because if you have a project manager that can go, do you know what, no problem, throw as much change as you want at me. Here are the impacts and here are the considerations. I've managed those and I've wrapped them up in something that's really clear, really understandable. Here are your 3 options. Which one shall we go with? That's a much easier conversation. And it takes something that could be quite friction causing and brings everybody together and pulling in the same direction.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I concur with that, and the fact that you're trying to get ahead of the curve when you're a project manager, understanding, taking a little bit more on what Sam said there. You're trying to understand the risk, that what might be an issue if the interest rate does go up. What happens if you're an HS2 and you hit a power line? What are the impacts on that? So understanding your risks, understanding how to get around those risks, and don't be afraid of change. If you're in project management, that is where your life lives. Your life lives running around, looking for change and making change happen for benefit. And again, new and modern PMs, I guess, as opposed to looking after a schedule, it's about delivering, these days, about delivering benefit quickly to your stakeholders, and just understanding those changes that need to be made, the risks that might happen throughout the project, and keeping everybody informed. So we talk about the sort of the long term, the medium term, and the short term approaches. So Sam talked there about a roadmap. The roadmap, again, taking the example of HS2, the roadmap is to have a fast train line between London and the north. What you want to do is you want to break that down into bite-sized chunks where that is your 2-year roadmap. What do you want to achieve by the end of the quarter? This is it. How do you achieve that? You take your iterations and you work through chunks of work. And again, I'm trying my hardest to keep away from spouting and telling you about agile.
Go on. Use the word sprints. You want to. I can see it.
Bringing it down into sprints and when you're in those sprints, understanding what you can take in. So you might have 1 million hours worth of work, but you've actually only got 2 people working 60 hours in a 2-week period. So you need part of the project management is scheduling, but it's understanding how to schedule. So you're not just dumping everything in the first sprint and we'll move it to the next one and we'll move it to the next one. No motivation for the team if that keeps happening.
From what I see you do in the team, Mark, it's really important to manage those expectations. And like you've just said, things are going to change. I mean, I'm yet to know a project that goes smoothly to plan over the whole entire course. There's always changes or adaptations, whatever you want to call them. So I guess putting those in at the start, but how can project managers come to terms with that and make sure that even though those changes are going to happen, how can they still be on track in the end?
Yeah, so part of that again is understanding the change, understanding what the client wants. So understanding your stakeholder, and knowing that not everything has to be all singing, all dancing, bells and whistles at the end. Because you might then go, what we'll do is we'll look at what we've got to do and how long it's going to do. So we've planned the project and we've planned the sprint, but more things creep into that sprint as you go. And you then expand and start to do the planning, and don't be afraid to have the difficult conversations and reduce the scope of the project, because when you've been asked to deliver a project, you've been asked to deliver the bells and whistles. But what is the benefit? Because the color scheme might not be exactly right, and I use that in a flippant way, or a button might not be in the right place, but does it work? Are we going to get benefit for this tool being used in the general public, if it's a tool for everybody, or if it's an internal tool, you can probably strip back even more. So it's don't be afraid to have those difficult conversations.
Yeah. Sam, I feel like you want to add something there. You're nodding profusely.
Yeah, I think exactly like Mark says, that prioritization piece is really important. And unless the PM guides the team to do that piece well, everything will automatically be top priority. It's quite difficult to get stakeholders to willingly deprioritize some of their ideas, because we all feel very attached to everything, and that's why we want to go on innovation projects, because we like shiny stuff. Kind of just rewinding a little bit, I think that the single most important thing a PM can do to help manage that change is have a clear visibility of the long-term plan and be able to say, we are 20%, 30%, 42% of the way through it because of the information they've collected, and then have a really, really, really exact view of the very short term. So we know that in the next 2 weeks, we are going to do exactly this. And that's what builds confidence, because if you deliver exactly, repeatedly, that wins you the confidence from your stakeholders to give you that room and to trust you when you're asking them to prioritize, when you're asking them to compromise, or when you're asking to work together and find a solution to an immovable date, an immovable budget, but a change in scope. I can't stress enough the importance of that regular communication that's tailored to the audience.
Yeah, definitely. And I think we talk about almost it's the different stages in the life cycle of a project, isn't it? There, but I guess it'd be quite interesting for people to know as well, for smaller projects, medium projects, large projects, do they all have the same principles and processes? Is there a different way people should be approaching them? Because I know for myself, in marketing projects, the bare bones and sort of the process will remain the same, but there are quite a lot of variables. Mark, what's your take on this?
No, I think they are fairly similar all the way around. There might be different assets and different reports that you provide depending on the size and the roadmap and the program of work. But the principles are, you want to break it down into small bite-sized chunks. You want the team to be involved in estimating how big these tasks are before you start the work on them. You want to make sure that you've highlighted that your team is available to you when you expect them to be available to them. And also, I like to keep a buffer in, because, you know, we work right now in software development, and software development, we're always going to be able to enhance, and there might be some little niggles that we develop that once go through testing, we need to make sure that we cover. So you don't always have 100% of new feature development in your sprint. You might have 5 to 10% of that time that you can allocate to fixing anything that comes back from testing, so that you can, and again, complete the work, complete the sprint, because that keeps the team morale up. And when you're working in short, sharp sprints, you can do 10 sprints. That's, you know, in an ideal world, that's 20 weeks, but you won't know you've done 20 weeks. You will think you've done 5 because you're delivering. Whereas if you go down the route of, you know, waterfall, and you're watching, those 20 weeks become quite painful. Things miss, and you end up doing everything in the last 5 weeks as opposed to delivering benefit. So always look at delivering benefit at the end of each sprint, end of each iteration. What can you deliver? What can be used? And look for feedback so that you can then enhance it as you go along. But again, just because you get feedback doesn't mean it goes into the next sprint or the next piece of work. As Sam said, you prioritize what needs to be done.
And I think particularly on longer projects, there can be a temptation, if you don't have experienced project managers, to shy away from the planning and look at the project in really big chunks. So we think back at the HS2 example, you think about it in 50-mile chunks. But actually, what you really need to do is think about the project from 2 points of view. First of all, you think about it in slices. So across my timeline, which parts of the project am I going to build? And those slices need to be small enough that you can reconcile against them. You know, 100 miles of train track is too much. 1 mile of rail track is probably too little, but you probably need to think about it in good segments so that you can actually validate, you know, we've built a railway from here to here, and there's this bridge, and there's this signal box, etc., etc. But then you also need to think about the project in layers. What parts of the system or of the project are we doing right now? So you think of a marketing campaign, there isn't just a campaign idea. There's actually the execution, there's the distribution, there's the internal buy-in, there's the activation. I'm running out of marketing words, I'm sorry.
There's many more.
All of these things need to be thought of one on top of the other, because otherwise you end up delivering something that doesn't actually have any value. And in an ideal world, you want to be delivering completed slices of your project at each iteration. And the bigger the project, the trickier it can be to get those slices well understood and well defined. That's where a good PM, supported by a product owner, a tech lead, a CTO, whatever other roles need to be around them, they're worth their weight in gold in that initial setup.
Right, yeah, I agree, and I'm sure that's music to your ears, Mark.
Yes.
Always good to hear from you, boss. I think I'm just conscious of time here, and I really want to ensure that we share something that's going to help people in terms of a practical side of things. So what practical things can teams and can sort of people in their own organization use to almost keep their projects on track? What's the best practices?
Yeah, so we here at Thought Quarter, we use a tool called Productive, and again, it's a ticketing system. We use that. You would click into one of them, and then you would have a lot more detail about what it was that was being delivered. However, I've used whiteboards and post-it notes. I've used Excel spreadsheets. I've used Microsoft Project. Use what is needed. There's no prescribed, you must use this, you must use that. Use what is needed from your business. I said, I spent 10, 15 years with post-it notes up on a whiteboard. Business has gone on a lot further. So what we've just shown you there in Productive is basically notes on a whiteboard. However, those post-it notes on a whiteboard are is a software tool. One of the other things that is very powerful would be our reporting solution. So we have status reports that we would do every week. So not just at the end of every sprint. So we would do a status report. We would have one at the start of the sprint that tells you what you were doing, an interim one that tells you how we're progressing through, and then we would have one at the end of the project, which would start the next one, next sprint, which would start the next sprint and also close off the outgoing sprint. So again, it's telling your client what's been happening through the week, 2 weeks worth of work that you've done, and again, status on it. Again, the RAG status, red, amber, green, on how you think the project has been perceived. And again, don't be scared to have difficult conversations about when it goes to amber and red.
Sure.
And I think that's probably the key takeaway for me, is that we've agreed that everyone's a project manager in some way, shape, or form. So that means whatever project you're managing, you need two views of it. You need that internal view that gives you the detail of tickets, where you're up to, real specifics, but then you need to translate that into an exec summary, something like this slide. Now, behind this, when we share this with clients, we then have more detail about the specific that's in this sprint, what's in the next sprint, what we're waiting for the client for, what the budget looks like, etc. And I don't want to take anything away from the work that Mark and his team do. This is a PowerPoint template. This isn't a massively complicated and expensive tool. It's something that literally anyone listening to this podcast can do for themselves. And producing these reports regularly puts you back in that position of having the confidence of your stakeholders. If you're updating people every 2 weeks or every week, sooner or later you will have to update them about something that they probably don't want to hear, or you'll have to ask them to make a decision that isn't really the first thing they'd like to decide. But having built up the confidence and the track record of reporting, that makes that conversation much easier. And linked to that, I think it's really tempting for the PMs to only go knocking on stakeholders' doors with bad news. It's really important that we celebrate the good stuff. It's quite easy to say, of course we delivered on time. Of course the sprint was completed. Duh. But no, that's actually a win. Delivering something that was agreed should be celebrated and should be really clearly stated, because every time you're kind of putting money in the bank and you're allowing yourself some freedom and some space for when things do deviate a little from expectation.
And I guess that comes back to what we were talking about previously about keeping things in short, sharp sprints. I know we want to use iterations, but if we continue to do that and report on each sprint, we are going to have more good, and we are going to see the development. We're going to be able to spot the risks. So it all kind of links together, doesn't it, Sam?
Yeah. And I guess if I can just throw in one last key takeaway, if you've been looking at these assets, you've been hearing the conversation we've been having, you've probably realized that it takes time. So we have people who are dedicated to doing this full time. If everyone is a PM, then everyone needs to make some time for status reporting. And it's something that in larger corporates, we probably do automatically. Anyone who's had corporate experience, you'll know that there's usually a block in your diary on a Friday afternoon to send out your status reports, because it's just how these organizations work. It's quite easy in an SME, particularly in a smaller SME, to just get sucked into the cycle of doing until your manager asks for an update, and then you're desperately trying to remember what you did. It's actually much, much easier to put some value on these updates. Set yourself some time, maybe 2 or 3 hours on a Friday afternoon to send out all of your status reports to relevant stakeholders. The difference it makes is phenomenal, because it forces you to have something to report on, but it also builds this track record of consistent, clear communication.
Yeah, I think it's important to recognise the value of it. I mean, just because it's not giving out a tangible result in terms of reporting, it makes a whole world of difference. It'll make your job easier, and it'll make your life easier if you ever come to work with the board or work with your stakeholders, internal or external. You can't skip on reporting. That's the long and short of it. So yeah. I guess the best way to close this up is with a few key takeaways. If we're going to keep it short and sweet to 3, I think these would be the 3 we go. Mark?
Yeah, allocate time to project management. It is an important role within your delivery, and even if you're in a big corporate and you have a number of project managers, or if you're in a small SME, understand that you need that headspace to plan your projects. So short, medium, long-term plans. They're not optional. Understand where your roadmap is, but understand what you need to deliver tomorrow, and everything in between. And communication, reporting, formal, informal communication is massively important. The informal communication can get lost, so keep that reporting cycle. If it's at the end of each week, you make sure that you put some time in, that you deliver to your key stakeholders what has been delivered and what has been worked through this week.
And I guess, does that apply, Mark, even if you're not a project manager, say you haven't got a project manager, but you've somehow found yourself playing a part in a project?
Yes, I think so, because you'll be delivering something for somebody. So I would keep it, and again, the report that we showed can be up to 10 pages. I think keep it short and sharp, the same as your sprints, and report to everybody.
Perfect. Mm-hmm. All right. Well, I think in true project management style, we are bang on time. We've just got time to say thank you to everyone who's tuned in. We've got a really exciting webinar next week. We'll announce it a little bit later, but if you've ever had to deal with your CFO or wonder what they think, you're going to want to come into this one. So keep an eye out for that. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Mark. And thank you, everyone else too. Speak to you soon.
Thank you. Have a great day. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.